So you all know I love classic guitars, and let's be honest, it doesn't get any more classic than this. Hey everyone, I'm Jack Fossett. Welcome to the channel, and thank you for tuning in to this shootout between the two that really started it all, the Fender Telecaster and the Gibson Les Paul. Obviously, a lot of people have done a lot of shootouts of this sort of nature, and so I'm not trying to do anything necessarily revolutionary or groundbreaking here. It's just something that I've wanted to do for a while, to put these two back to back. In some parts for my own curiosity, just to hear my own guitars back to back, and particularly these two, not just for the history, but because they're often compared to each other tonally. You'll hear a lot of people, particularly people who are into vintage instruments, say how the early Telecasters and the early Les Pauls have a lot of tonal similarities, which people who are into the modern guitars might not appreciate quite as much, because they each sort of, they each almost played into themselves. You know, the Les Paul being a real powerhouse of a guitar with a huge mid-range punch and a lot of sustain, and the Telecaster becoming known as sort of like the twangy instrument and everything. Obviously, they're both known for more than that. I'm very much generalizing here. But the early ones would have been much closer to each other in terms of tone. So I wanted to put these two back to back, because these two are they're modern instruments, but they're good representations of the classic style. It's a 50s style Telecaster, and the Les Paul has all 50s appointments. It has low wind PAF style pickups, 50s style wiring, and the whole works. Which also brings up a really cool point, which is that these are two unique inventions that they really got very right the first time. You know, obviously there were some little improvements. Having the truss rod adjustment available at the headstock, which Fender would do later on, was a huge improvement. The earliest Les Pauls had a few kinks that needed to be worked out. Obviously, the earliest Les Pauls would have had P90 pickups and not humbucking pickups. But my point is that, you know, like you look at a telephone in the 50s versus a telephone now, or cars in the 50s versus cars now, or, you know, you name it, versus like Telecasters and Les Pauls in the 50s versus Telecasters and Les Pauls now. It's really cool to see how enduring these designs were. Now, as I've just said, the early ones are kind of, you know, a lot of people will talk about how similar they are, but what actually struck me in this video, in shooting it and doing it, was actually how different they were. Because I've even said that before, you know, it's like, part of it is that you can make a Telecaster sound like a Les Paul if you want to. Basically, if you push a little bit of extra mid-range, push the volume and push the gain, you can get into Les Paul territory using a Telecaster. You can't so much go the other way around, and part of it has to do with top end and clarity, and a Les Paul just has an incredible thickness to the tone in a rich way. It has a, you know, that big singing smooth sustain, and you can't really back that off too much. You know, there are certain things you can play with the volume and stuff, and you can dial it in certain ways, but like you can never really get a Les Paul to sound like a Telecaster. You can get a Telecaster to sound like a Les Paul. But what I enjoyed about doing this video is that it made me abandon that whole thing of, you know, like, oh, well, they're really more similar than you would expect. So they're, you know, because then when you start to think that way, you almost think of them as interchangeable. And playing the two back to back actually made me really appreciate and enjoy the differences between them, because they are unique instruments. And even though they're the two that really started the craze, they're the two that started the solid body craze, and you could make arguments as to whether or not Les Paul or Leo Fender were the ones who came out with it originally. I've seen a lot of people argue about it historically as to which one is technically the first, and I don't want to get into that. I'd love to do more history videos on these, but that's not really the subject of today's video. I think it's really cool to put them back to back and sort of get some kind of an idea of what it was like that started it all. So in that vein, today I am plugging into a Supro Black Magick, which is based on Jimmy Page's Supro that he used on Led Zeppelin 1. Very simple, straightforward tube amplifier. For the overdriven tones today, I am using the Browne amplification Carbon X. I'm using mostly one side of the Carbon X for some light gain, but when we get to the bridge pickup, I am going to kick in both sides of it to punch the gain up a little bit. And what you're about to hear, you've just heard it in a jam, what you're about to hear is both guitars back to back, both clean and overdriven on all pickup settings. And again, it's funny because there are some ways they sound similar and some ways they sound different. The feel is incredibly different. And I think that's an important thing to bring up, that they just, you sink into them a little bit differently. You know, not just the scale length, but the fingerboard radius and, you know, the shapes of the necks and things, and just the way that the, you know, the angle of the neck on the Les Paul versus the angle on the, or the, I should say the not angle so much on the Telecaster, they just feel and hold very differently. And having those differences sort of calls out different music, which I think is the other cool thing about multiple different guitars is, you know, you can play two different guitars even dialed in the same way, even if they sound different. Sometimes just the fact that they might play differently can lead you to attempt different things. You know, I might go for some faster, flashier licks on a Les Paul, knowing that I can get away with it easier because of the shorter scale length, because of the fingerboard radius, and also because of the tunematic bridge. You know, I know that I'm going to have better intonation higher up on the neck, and obviously, yeah, there's a whole discussion to be had there about the Telecaster and the three saddle bridge and why it actually works better than you think it would. But again, it's not really the focus. My point is that, you know, with a Telecaster, I might not play quite as flashy, but then I might also stop and really think about what I'm playing, which sometimes could lead to better melodic content. So different guitars can bring out sort of different flavors of your own playing just based on their general makeup. So let us know what you like better. Based on what a lot of you that subscribe to me talk about in the comments, I'm going to guess that many of you are a Telecaster fan. I know I get more comments about people wanting me to play a Telecaster and dive in with a Telecaster than I do with a Les Paul. And I probably would like picture myself more as a Telecaster player than a Les Paul player, and yet the more I think about it, I'm like, you know, I think I actually play Les Pauls more than I play Telecasters. And I enjoy them. You know, I enjoy pretty much all classic guitars that have good character, but there's just so much personality in both guitars. Let us know in the comments, which do you prefer? Do you have anything to add about what your thoughts are on these two models? Either their similarities, their differences, tonally, makeup-wise, historically. Please let us know in the comments. If you want to support the channel, check out my gear recommendations page, which you can access below. Through there are affiliate links. If you shop through any of those links, I get commission off of anything that you buy. It costs nothing extra to you, so please think about supporting the channel that way while you get cool gear. I'm Jack Fossett. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the video.